And my psychiatric survivor activism actually was quite slow to get off the ground, although the ingredients were there, because Don Weitz happened to live in the same neighborhood as I did, East End, Toronto. And he and I were introduced by a United Church Street minister as people who had something in common. Clearly, Don was the spark plug behind the early organizing in Toronto, and he was so committed. He actually quit his job as a psychologist at Queen Street Mental Health Center in protest of some of the what he thought was outrageous methods that were being used, treatment modalities. And he turned himself into basically a full-time organizer. And somehow he got plugged into the beginnings of the international survivor movement. So by 1972, the Madness Network News was starting to be published. And if you got on their mailing list, you could find out what was going on all across the United States and in Europe as well. And these would have been newsletters that would be sort of like a blog is today. They'd be badly printed, but a lot of very smart people writing articles and discussing what they were doing wherever they were. And Don found out about the MPA in Vancouver, so he went out there. And he went out there and stayed in one of the houses for 11 days. And got really inspired by the participatory democracy that he saw in operation there. And he came back to Toronto, and I remember him coming back just high as a kite, wanting to do something like that here. And in fact, we never pulled it off here quite the way they did. And I've never really examined exactly why. I might one day. So it took until 1977, actually, until Don pulled off the first meeting. And it was in August, and it was at All Saints Church. There was an Anglican priest there who opened the church up to grassroots groups to use it for organizing purposes. Wonderful guy. Anyway, and the meeting was packed. 150 people showed up, and they were all people who had been customers of the mental health system here in Ontario, and in various ways felt abused by it. And that was where the Ontario Mental Patients Association was born. And Don had recruited a guy named Alf Jackson as his sort of twin, I guess. I think Don would say that he and Alf founded the OMPA. And Alf was, he was a great guy. I don't really know where Alf came from, or I think he came a bit closer to the street than Don did. And I remember starting to have meetings, or going to meetings, where there would be increasing numbers of people coming to see what this was about. And we were using board space at the time. And eventually, Don got some money from the City of Toronto, from Community Economic Development Fund, to help fund the Mad Market. Prior to that, they'd been running a kind of lawn sale, or a flea market that just was revolving, right? It would move around, and they would, Alf and Don got a pickup truck, and they would go through Rosedale on garbage night, pick up stuff, and the next day it would be on sale in the garage sale that we had without a garage. And at that time, I was earning my living as a plumber. So I would go by the lawn sale with used plumbing fixtures that I had just removed from somebody's house in Rosedale, and we'd put them, and people would come and pay $5 for a toilet that was still good, right? But my involvement wasn't very heavy with this because I was very busy, with my business, which was, you know, when you're, my company was called Alternative Plumbing, and I employed a lot of out-of-work playwrights and artists, so they were hard to manage. And I had 2 kids, and my wife worked, and then I had all this political stuff I was doing, right? So the psychiatric survivor organizing stuff was pretty catch as catch can for me.